Hello, everybody.
Hello, teacher.
Hello, teacher.
Hello, how are we
Hello,
today?
teacher.
Hello. So, if we're not ready to begin yet, are we? There's still a few people missing.
Okay.
So we'll give it just another minute or two, and then we'll get started. Okay, let's begin. So, I've got a slideshow for you today that will help us with the topic we're going to be discussing. So let me bring that up for you now. And so here we go. The topic of today's lesson will be understanding the interlocutor, the motion, the proposition, and the opposition. So let's get ready to learn about the important parts of a debate. So everything that we're going to learn about today, I have mentioned in the past, but we're going to get into a bit more detail of it today. So it is important to understand the key terms used in a debate so you can address the other people by the correct title and follow the conversation as it happens. Because when you're in a debate, these people they'll just be using language that's very similar to the language that I use when I teach you. So they'll be talking about the proposition, the opposition, they'll ask for the motion, they'll refer you to the interlocutor. So it's important that we understand all of this so that we're able to follow along with the debate. It makes it a lot easier for us. So let's talk about the interlocutor, the motion, proposition, and opposition. Let me fix my camera first. There we go. So first of all, the interlocutor. The interlocutor is the moderator or the facilitator of the debate. And a moderator is somebody that makes sure that all of the rules are being followed. So they're kind of like the policemen of the debate. They ensure that the rules get followed. And a facilitator is somebody that runs something. So the interlocutor runs the debate. They ensure fairness, they manage the debate, and they maintain order. So fairness just means that we want to give everybody the equal chance to be able to speak, so nobody gets any more time to speak than anybody else. They manage the debate, so that's similar to the facilitator, where they'll call everything as it needs to happen. So they'll invite each speaker up to speak, and they will tell them when they've reached their time limit. And finally, to maintain order, again, that just means that everybody's going to follow the rules. It's going to be a nice, fair debate. Their responsibilities include introducing the motion, timekeeping, and facilitating Q&A sessions. So during a debate, there'll normally be a part of the debate where the audience or the judges will get to ask the debaters questions. Excuse me. Next up, we have the motion. Ooh. Throat was getting a bit dry. I've been talking too much today. The motion is the topic or the proposition being debated. So the motion is a statement that is made by the proposition team, and it is basically their stance. So what are they arguing? The motion is important because it sets the framework for the debate and it guides arguments. So the framework is like the structure of the debate. So it's the order, what order everybody speaks in, and it also guides arguments, because once we know what the motion is, we are able to work out which type of arguments we should be making based on which team we're on. So let's look at some examples. So I've got a sheet here. So just ignore the theme for now. We're going to focus on the motion today. So if the topic is, should every child learn how to swim? Then the motion is the statement made by the affirmative team, by the proposition, and that lets us know what side of the debate they're arguing for. So the motion would be something like, this house believes that every child should learn how to swim. Or if we take topic number 2, should children be allowed to have smartphones? The proposition would let us know what their side of the argument is by making the motion, this house believes that children should be allowed to have smartphones. And that then means that the opposition is going to argue the opposite side. So they would believe that children should not be allowed to have smartphones. Does that make sense for everybody?
Yes.
Terrific. Good, good, good. So let's move on to the proposition. The proposition is the team that supports the motion. They present arguments in favor of the motion. So the characteristics of the proposition team, they advocate for the adoption or the acceptance of the motion. So they, plainly put, they argue for people to believe the motion. And the other team is called the opposition. And the opposition is the team that opposes the motion. They present arguments against the motion. So they challenge the adoption or the acceptance of the motion. So to put that simply, they disagree, and they're going to try to convince you to disagree with the audience to disagree with the motion as well. The next topic that I want to talk about, now we've covered those definitions, is the interplay between the proposition and the opposition. And interplay just means, how do they interact with each other? How do they talk to each other? So the first thing to discuss are the dynamics of a debate. So what happens during a debate? Well, first of all, a debate is a clash of ideas, arguments, and perspectives. So when they say clash, that just means that we've got the proposition arguing this, the opposition arguing that, and they're clashing with each other. They're disagreeing and trying to get the audience to believe their side of it. It's very important that there are balanced and well-constructed arguments from both sides. So the balanced part of that simply means that everybody needs an equal amount of time to speak, and nobody should get more time than everybody else, because the hard part of the debate is taking all of that information that you want to tell the audience and making sure that you can fit that into the time that you've been given. Because if you're given 3 minutes, but your speech takes 3 minutes and 40 seconds, you're going to get cut off at 3 minutes, and the last 40 seconds of your speech won't get to be said. So we need to make sure that we can fit our argument into the time given. And that's where the well-constructed part of the argument comes in, because if you plan your arguments right and you practice giving the speech enough, you'll know how long it takes, and you can rework your arguments to fit them into the time that you're given. And of course, the goal of a debate is to persuade the audience and influence their stance on the motion. So you need to convince them to believe what you're saying more than they believe what your opponents are saying. And then if you can do that, you'll convince them to believe in you. So the interlocutor's role in mediating the debate. The interlocutor has quite a few jobs to do, in fact. And first of all, he needs to make sure that each team gets equal speaking time. That'll be the interlocutor's job. He'll be the one to cut you off and invite the next person up to speak. Another job is managing the flow of the debate and maintaining order. So the interlocutor will make sure the debate runs smoothly. He'll invite each speaker up to say their argument. And then when it's done, he'll tell them to sit down, invite the next person up. And when they maintain order, that actually has to do with the next point, which is resolving conflicts and enforcing debate rules. So sometimes when we're debating, our emotions can get the best of us, and we might stop debating with our opponents, and we might actually start arguing with us. It's the interlocutor's job to calm everybody back down. And of course, enforcing the rules just means to make sure that everybody follows the rules. So, let's recap. Let's go back over everything and make sure that we understand it. So I'm going to bring up a whiteboard. So we have 4 words to talk about. We've got interlocutor. We've got motion. We've got proposition. And we've got opposition. So, can I have somebody please raise their hand, and can somebody explain to me who the interlocutor is and what they do during a debate? I see Zon with his hand up.
The interlocutor look like the police in the debate. His job is do that everyone follow the rule.
Very good. Very good, Zon.
Yeah. Oh, hey, it's trouble. It's trouble. Oh, yeah. Are you busy at the moment? Or?
No, I'm okay.
I wanted to.
Okay, very good, Zon. Thank you. Can I have somebody else now tell me something about the motion of the debate? What is the motion? Tony.
Sorry, I need a Saturday. I only just donated tomorrow.
Tony, can you explain to me what the motion is?
Motion is a topic or statement is being debate.
Very good. The motion is a topic statement. Can you tell me, Tony, which team makes the motion?
Position.
Which team, sorry?
The proposition.
Very good. Very good. Now, can I have someone else, please? Someone that hasn't answered a question yet. Explain to me about the proposition, please. Who or what is the proposition? I want to give somebody else a chance. So, Tim, I'll ask you.
I don't know.
Why don't you know? We just talked about it.
Uh, I can't remember anything.
That's all right. By the way, guys, if you have a copy of the handouts that I've given you in the Zalo group, you are allowed to have those out during class if it makes it easier for you to understand the language that we use when we talk about debate. Don't worry, I see you, Zon, and I see you, Tony. I just want to give somebody else a chance. Lisa, can you tell me something about the proposition, please?
Proposition? About proposition or position?
The proposition, please.
That proposition is like we agree with something and we just talk about.
Okay, so the proposition is one of the teams of a debate, and that team agrees with the motion. That's very good. So
You've got a few days to work it out.
team that agrees with the motion. Thank you very much, Lisa. And finally, I'll ask Ben, please. Can you tell me of something about the opposition? Ben?
The last person I was at, I've had like my reviews 30.
Guess not. Hannah, can you please tell me something about the opposition, please?
I think the opposition is the team that is disagree with the motion.
Very good. The opposition is the team that agrees with the motion. Oh, not agrees.
Not agrees or disagrees.
Disagrees. You're right, you caught me. The team that disagrees with the motion. Very good, guys. Well done. So we have our 4 definitions here. So we've got our definition for the interlocutor, the motion, the proposition, and the opposition. So well done, everybody. So the next thing we're going to do, we're going to figure out the relationship between all of these words that we've just learned. So I'm going to write them on the board here. We have the interlocutor, We have the motion. We have the proposition. And we have the opposition. Now, what I'm going to do, I'm going to connect all of these words with some lines. And what we're going to do now is to figure out how all of these different terms are related to each other. So first of all, how are the proposition and the opposition related to each other? Zon. How are the proposition and the opposition teams related to each other? What do they do in a debate?
They debate it.
Pardon?
They argument each other.
Very good. So the proposition and the opposition argue against each other. Very good. Now, next up, Tony,
Yeah.
can you figure out any of the other relationships in this picture?
The proposition and the opposition argue about the motion.
Very good. So pick one of them. What does the proposition do with the motion?
The proposition gives the argument in favor of the motion.
Very good. The proposition argues in favor of the motion. Very good. Now, Elsa.
Yes.
If the proposition argues in favor of the motion, what does the opposition do with the motion? So if one, good.
About motion.
But what about the motion? If one team argues in favor of the motion, so argues for the motion, what does the other team do?
Not argues in favor of the motions.
Good. They don't argue in favor, or they argue against the motion. Good. So let's talk about the interlocutor. How does the interlocutor relate to the proposition and the opposition? Now, a little hint here is that the interlocutor has the same relationship with both teams. I see Zon with his hand up. Zon, what's your answer?
Can you talk again the question?
I can. So what relationship does the interlocutor have with the both teams? The hint is he has the same relationship with both teams.
He keep that to most teams follow the rules.
Good. The interlocutor makes sure the rules are followed. And can anyone think of something else that the interlocutor does? I see Hannah has her hand up.
I think that the interlocutor make the debate fair for each team.
Very good. That's the one I was hoping someone would say. Good job, Hannah. So make the debate there.
200 of them. I could sell them $20 to $30 each. They got 200.
It's a lot harder than I thought it would be to write on a funny angle like that. And finally, we are going to change the word motion to topic for this last answer. But what is the relationship between the interlocutor and the topic of the debate?
The truck shackle. It's a big truck. I saw it online coming right away. Truck shackle.
Zon, you're on fire. What's your answer?
Wait a minute. The interlocutor looked at the motion, looked at the topic to make sure of the rules.
Okay, good. So that is one answer. The interlocutor. The interlocutor makes sure teams are arguing correctly based on the motion or the theme. Very good. Okay, so good job, everybody. We've figured out how all of these different teams relate to all of these different terms, sorry, relate to each other. Well done, everybody. Okay, give me just one moment. I'll be right back. Okay, so I just had to find the next document to show you. So after class, I'm going to send some more handouts to the Zalo group. So make sure you get a copy of them, try and get them printed out, or at least have them accessible for future classes. Because if you're able to study these documents and learn what's on them, it will make these classes a lot easier for you. So,
$713 for 3 hours. Pretty good, huh?
the next thing we're going to discuss is how to develop arguments for the proposition and the opposition. Now, these are just some handy hints for you to make your arguments that much better. And if you learn these little tips, no one will be able to stop you. So, debates require participants to construct persuasive arguments for both the proposition and the opposition sides. By developing well-reasoned and evidence-based arguments, debaters can effectively present their perspectives and engage in meaningful discussions. Here are some strategies to help you construct arguments for both sides. So, first of all, we're going to look at some strategies for how to create arguments for the proposition team. So first of all, we need to clearly state our position. So we instantly need to, as soon as we start talking, we need to let the judges and the audience know that we support the motion and that we are the proposition. So that's important. Right off the bat, we need to let everybody know what side we're on and what we're arguing for. Secondly, we need to provide evidence. Now, evidence is information that we can use, so information from other people that we can use to back up our own arguments. And that evidence can be credible sources, facts, statistics, expert opinions, and examples. So when we say credible sources, we need to make sure that the information comes from a person or an organization that people are going to listen to and believe. So we couldn't, for example, just say, oh, my friend Tom said that this is true, because everybody in the audience is going to look at you and go, well, who's Tom and why should we believe him when he says that? But if you get some information from a doctor or from a government department on a topic, people are going to believe that, and it's going to make your arguments that much more credible. Number 3, we need to use logical reasoning. So we use logic and reasoning to demonstrate the validity of our arguments and show how they align with the motion. So using logic just means that we need everybody to be able to understand our arguments. So to use logic, we make sure that we write our arguments in a way that makes sense to everybody. And reasoning means that if you are to explain your argument to somebody, they're able to listen to what you have to say, and then they will be able to follow along with it. You need to anticipate and address counter arguments. So we need to make sure that during the early research phase, like before the debate even happens, we need to make sure that we consider points of view from both sides. And the reason for that is because part of a debate is giving rebuttals. So you'll get a chance to try and prove the arguments that the other team makes wrong. And if you think about them before you even go into the debate, you've got a much better chance of being able to convince the audience to believe you and not believe them. But if you don't prepare beforehand, then you'll be thinking on the spot, oh, they've said this, how can I prove that wrong? So that will be a very big one for you, preparing ahead of time. You need to use persuasive techniques. Now, persuasion is convincing somebody of an idea or trying to convince them to do something that you want them to do by pointing out the good things about it. So we need to utilize persuasive techniques like rhetorical devices, which are questions or statements that don't need explaining or answering. We can just instantly, like it makes us think about something. So I might say something to you or ask you a question and you'll sit there and it'll make you think about it rather than answer it. Emotional appeals. And an emotional appeal is when you try and get the audience or the judges to feel how you want them to feel. So if you're talking about a topic that makes you happy, the best way to convince people of that is, the best way to win people over to that side of the argument is to make them feel the same way that you do. So if you can make them feel happy about a topic that makes you happy, then they're going to agree with you because they feel the same way that you do. And impactful language, which is just using big words and big statements that make the audience really listen to what you're saying. And if you can do all of that, you will make your arguments very compelling. People will believe them and want to listen to them. The next thing you need to do is structure your arguments. So you need to organize your arguments in a logical and coherent manner. And what that means is that, again, logical, they have to make sense, and coherent means that people have to understand it. So if it makes sense and people can understand what you're saying, you're going to present a very strong argument that people are going to believe. And perhaps the most important point is to summarize your key points. So you'll be given somewhere between 3 to 5 minutes to deliver your arguments. And you can say a lot of words in 3 to 5 minutes. So the audience is likely to forget. So at the end of your argument, if you just remind the audience about all the points that you've made, that's going to help them remember a lot better. And if they remember your points of view, they're going to believe them. So do we have any questions so far?
I
About
don't have any.
Terrific. So let's move on then. We're going to talk about creating arguments for the opposition. Now, as you'll notice, the lists are pretty much identical. So clearly state your position, provide evidence, logical reasoning. The lists are basically the same, but what you do with those techniques is what is different. So, number one, clearly state your opposition. Begin by clearly stating your disagreement with the motion and your stance as the opposition. So right from the beginning, you need to let the audience know that you disagree and that you're going to try to convince them to disagree as well. Number two, provide evidence. So you need to back up your arguments with the same credible sources, facts, statistics, expert opinions, and examples, except you need to get evidence that's going to challenge the motion. So it's going to make it difficult for the proposition to make people believe. You need to use logical reasoning, except you need to use logic and reasoning to highlight the things that are wrong in the proposition's arguments, and you need to find the weakness in their arguments. Number four, you need to anticipate and refute opposing claims. So you need to prepare in advance as well, just like the proposition, except you need to prepare to undermine. You need to prepare to prove the proposition wrong. You need to use persuasive techniques, and the persuasive techniques that you will use will be things like logical fallacy identification. And that means that you're going to be looking for things that people think are true, but are actually not. You're going to use critical analysis, which is to look over the proposition's arguments and try and pull them apart, basically. Look for everything that's wrong with what the proposition is saying. And you need well-structured counter arguments to persuade the audience to reject the proposition. So again, we need to convince the audience and the judges to not believe the proposition team. We need to prove them wrong. Number six is the same. We still need to structure our arguments and make sure that they make sense and that people can understand them. And finally, we need to summarize all the important things that we've said and make sure that the audience remembers them. Because to be honest, it's going to be the arguments that the judges remember the best will usually be the arguments that win. So you need to make the judges remember you and what you say. Okay. So, do we have any questions? Anything you'd like to say about what we've spoken about today?
I don't have any.
That's good. Does anybody else have any questions?
No.
Terrific. So if that's the case, I am going to give you some homework. So in the first class, I got you to write down on that worksheet a topic you'd like to debate and come up with some arguments for both sides of the debate. Now, what I'd like you to do is take those arguments and I'd like you to expand on them. So each argument you wrote down, I'd just like you to write about 3 or 4 sentences about each argument that you wrote down. And I just want you to expand on those arguments. 3 or 4 sentences per argument, so it's not a lot. So I'll post that into the Zalo group sometime this evening. And as well, I will also post those pictures that I drew, although the words that I wrote on the whiteboard, I'll post those in the Zalo group too.
What is the homework? Do we need to print it?
I'll write the homework in the Zalo group, but do you remember the homework I gave you from the first lesson to fill out that worksheet?
No.
Well, that homework from the first lesson, I want you to take each of those arguments and I want you to write 3 or 4 sentences about each argument. So you're going to get a bit more detailed now.
Okay.
Okay. So the last thing I want to talk to you about this evening before we finish up is the importance of understanding these roles. So in order to really participate well in a debate, you need to know and understand the terms that we've talked about today. So the motion, the interlocutor, the proposition, and the opposition. Because if you know what those words mean and who those people are and what the motion is, then there's really nothing that you can't do in a debate, because the interlocutor has other responsibilities. And those responsibilities are, if somebody doesn't understand a rule of the debate, then they can ask the interlocutor to explain the rule to them. So if you're not sure about something, you can just ask the interlocutor to tell you about it. So if you know that, then you're going to be really, really set in a debate. So understanding these terms, it enhances our ability to construct well-informed arguments and counter-arguments. And the reason for that is because if we know what opposition and proposition mean, and we know which team we're on, it tells us what kinds of arguments we need to be making. So do we need to agree with the motion? Do we need to disagree with the motion? That lets us know. And finally, it promotes a deeper understanding of the debate process and dynamics. So the more we understand about these important roles, the easier it's going to be to learn the rest of the rules of the debate. So the order that people speak in, how long they've got to speak, just all of these things is going to be so much easier to learn. So what are the next steps? So the next steps are to practice identifying and analyzing motions, proposition, and opposition in debates. So along with the written homework, I also want you to watch a few debate videos. Just writing this down myself. So you can find videos of debates on YouTube or other video sharing websites. So I want you to watch videos and try and work out who is the proposition, who is the opposition, and what the motion they are debating about is. So I want you to watch these videos and start trying to figure all this stuff out, because if you get it now, the rest of this process is going to be easy. I want you to explore different debate scenarios and motions to strengthen your understanding. So there are a few different types of debates that you can be a part of. So there are debates that happen at schools. There are debates that happen at competitions.
Are
And-
emergency methods
Pardon?
and emergency methods.
Yes, we can also have debates at emergency meetings too. Very well done. And there are also public debates, which are debates that, when the government have debates about different topics, whether they're discussing the environment, whether they're discussing any other issues. That's usually a public debate when the government get together and debate. Just writing this down now. And finally, the subject of our next couple of lessons will be, so our next lesson is going to be a big revision session. We're going to go back over everything that we've learned in these first 3 lessons together. Because like I said earlier, if you understand all of this early stuff that we're learning, then the rest of it is going to be easy, because all of this is like not the rules of the debate, but this is going to be like, if you know this stuff, then the other stuff is just all based off of this. So we're going to do a big revision session. And then the lesson following that, we're going to learn about the teal paragraph structure. So we're going to start learning how to write our arguments. And I'm going to demonstrate one, show you how to do it, and then we're going to have a go at it in class. So to finish up, remember that it's important to understand these terms to make your debating experience easier to navigate. So if you understand these terms, the rest of debating is easy. And remember to watch some debating videos on the internet to further develop your understanding. So
Let's goodbye.
So fantastic work, everybody. We've learned a lot of stuff today, and we did some fantastic work with figuring out relationships of the debating terms. So you've all done fantastic today. Well done. And I'll see you next Tuesday. Have a lovely weekend, and I'll post your homework tonight.
Goodbye.
Okay,
Good-
goodbye, teacher.
Goodbye, teacher.
Hope you
Bye.
Goodbye, everybody.
Goodbye,
Goodbye. Thank you for attending. Hello.